Hello and welcome to The Know. Here are today's top stories. Southwest Water has said they will pay out millions for the water contamination in Devon. Thousands of people have taken to the streets for the funeral of Iranian President Raisi. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has promised a comprehensive compensation for the victims of a blood scandal that has rocked the NHS. And the ICC Chief Prosecutor has applied for arrest warrants for the leaders of Israel and Hamas. Keep watching to find out more. Southwest Water Company has said they would pay out approximately £3.44 million in the compensation for customers affected by a parasite outbreak in Devon. In a statement, the company said, "Compensation has been increased to £215, almost half the amount of an annual average bill, for those customers still subject to boil water advice in the Hillhead, Upper Brixham and Kingswear areas. This payment will be made automatically where we have direct debit details or applied as a credit to the next water bill where we do not. Currently there is a boil water notice for Hillhead, upper part of Brixham and Kingswear." Last week, Southwest Water confirmed it had detected small traces of Cryptosporidium in the Alston and Hillhead area of Devon. There have been at least 46 cases of confirmed cryptosporidiosis in the South Devon area, according to the UK Health Security Agency. Over 100 more people have been reporting symptoms to their GPs in the last week. Over 16,000 homes and businesses have been affected by the contamination, with the public left to queue for miles to be able to get drinking water. The parasite comes from human and/or animal feces, and in this case it has been reported that it could be from cows. The illness does not have any medication and symptoms include stomach pains, nausea, fever and prolonged diarrhea. Thousands of people have taken to the streets of Tabriz for the funeral and procession of Iranian President Raisi. Mourners could be seen adorning flowers onto the funeral procession as it made its way through the thousands of people lined up on the street. The funeral started from the city close to where the helicopter carrying the president crashed. Raisi's body is expected to be buried on Thursday in his birthplace in Mashhad. The country has entered the second day of mourning after the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei announced the president's death along with the foreign minister after the helicopter crashed. Iran's Vice President Mohammad Mokhtaba was appointed as acting president of the Islamic Republic on Monday, and a new election will be held within the next 50 days. Mr. Raisi was flying in a helicopter with the country's foreign minister after visiting the border region with Azerbaijan to inaugurate a dam. The president was flying back with the country's foreign minister and 8 others in a helicopter when it crashed in a densely forested area. Weather conditions were very poor, rain and fog making visibility very difficult. A major search and rescue operation was launched with an elite force overseeing the search and rescue. The president's helicopter was missing for nearly 12 hours before the wreckage was found completely burned out. Video footage from the site of the crash shows only parts of the tail section intact, with burnt debris scattered around. The president was flying with 2 other helicopters which were able to safely fly out of the area. The helicopter the president flew in was purchased back in the early 2000s. The country struggles to maintain aircraft due to sanctions from the US not allowing aircraft parts to the country. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has apologised for the blood scandal that has affected thousands of people and rocked the NHS.
"I want to make a wholehearted and unequivocal apology for this terrible injustice. First to apologise for the failure in blood policy and blood products, and the devastating and so often fatal impact this had on so many lives, including the impact of treatments that were known or proved to be contaminated. The failure to respond to the risk of imported concentrates, the failure to prioritise self-sufficiency in blood, the failure to introduce screening services sooner, and the mismanagement of the response to the emergence of AIDS and hepatitis viruses amongst infected blood victims. Second, to apologise for the repeated failure of the state and our medical professionals to recognise the harm caused."
Labour leader Keir Starmer echoed the Prime Minister's statement and apologised for the scandal as well.
"I want to acknowledge to every single person who has suffered that in addition to all of the other failings, politics itself failed you. That failure applies to all parties, including my own. there is only one word: sorry. And by that apology, I acknowledge that this suffering was caused by wrongdoing, delay, and systemic failure across the board, compounded by institutional defensiveness.
The apology from the two biggest parties in Westminster comes after a report into the NHS blood scandal was published on Monday. An estimated 30,000 people in the UK were inadvertently infected with HIV and hepatitis C in the 70s and 80s. Some 26,800 people were reportedly infected with hepatitis C after receiving blood transfusions, which can be needed due to an accident or childbirth complications. The inquiry was announced back in 2017 by the then Prime Minister Theresa May, who called the scandal an appalling tragedy which should simply never have happened. Thousands of people with haemophilia and other bleeding disorders were treated with contaminated blood. Over 1,000 people were infected with HIV, including 380 children. An estimated 2,900 people had died as a result of the scandal by 2019. The daughter of one of the victims spoke out after the inquiry was published.
You know, it's not that big a shock, to be honest with you. I mean, we've known this for years as campaigners. We've known this. It was just getting that confirmation that, you know, what we have been saying all along was right. The government covered it, you know, as best as they could, but they obviously haven't covered it very well because it's all come out now. They should be ashamed of themselves, disgusted. No amount of apologies or no amount of money is ever going to take away the pain and the suffering for anyone who is still alive or who has passed away.
The scandal occurred due to the UK not being self-efficient when it came to blood donation, which meant that it had to be imported from the US. The blood collected in the US came from inmates and drug addicts, a high-risk group who were paid to donate blood. Testing of blood for HIV and hepatitis did not begin until 1986 and 1991, years after people received contaminated blood. The government has said it accepts the moral case for compensation, and an interim compensation of £100,000 has been paid out to about 4,000 survivors. The Prime Minister has promised comprehensive compensation for the victims and their families. The government has reportedly earmarked an estimated £10 billion for compensation. And finally, the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, has applied for arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defence Minister Yoav Gallant.
I can also confirm today that I have reasonable grounds to believe, on the basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defence Yoav Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes committed on the territory of the State of Palestine from at least the 8th of October 2023. The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, willfully causing great suffering, serious injury to body or health, or cruel treatment.
Mr. Khan also applied for arrest warrants for Hamas, which included its military as well as those running its political bureau.
On the basis of evidence collected and examined and analysed by my office, I have reasonable grounds to believe that 3 senior leaders of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Daif, and Ismail Haniyeh, bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes committed on the territory of Israel and the State of Palestine from at least the 7th of October 2023. Extermination as a crime against humanity. Murder as a crime against humanity and as a war crime.
The application for the arrest warrants have been denounced by Western leaders, including President Joe Biden.
Let me be clear. We reject the ICC's application for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders. Whatever these warrants may imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. And it's clear Israel wants to do all it can to ensure civilian protection. But let me be clear. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide. We reject that. We will always stand with Israel and the threats against its security.
The ICC judges will now decide whether to grant the request for arrest warrants for the leaders, something which can take multiple weeks or months. If the arrest warrants are issued, then countries that are members of the ICC, which includes the UK and most of Europe, are obligated to comply and arrest the leaders if they step foot in their country. Mr. Khan has said that the application for the arrest warrant comes after months of investigation and gathering of evidence. An independent panel of legal experts formed by Mr. Khan, which includes Amal Clooney, supports the application for arrest warrants for the leaders of Israel and Hamas for war crimes. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak denounced the arrest warrants earlier this morning while on a visit to Austria.
Well, this is a deeply unhelpful development. Of course, it's still subject to a final decision, but it remains deeply unhelpful nonetheless. There is no moral equivalence between a democratic state exercising its lawful right to self-defense and the terrorist group Hamas. And it's wrong to conflate and as I said, equivocate between those two different entities. And what I'm very clear is that this will make absolutely no difference in getting a pause in the fighting, getting aid into the region, or indeed the hostages out.
Political leaders in Israel have condemned the ICC for the application of arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant with Hamas, denouncing the equivalence. Currently, the Israeli government are defending themselves in the ICJ after South Africa accused them of committing genocide in Gaza. Thanks for watching The Know. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to The Mirror for more daily news updates.